So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the movie. Okay. So, oh, my brain is not working.
Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name's Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Flomp. I am a bioarchaeologist who studies the human skeleton, health and disease and evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, a paleogeneticist interested in large cats and ice age extinctions.
And today we somehow have found another Christmas archaeology movie. But before we get into that, we have a correction for our t-shirt contest.
Ooh.
Joe reached out to us on Blue Sky. And Kim, this is one for you. I don't think we've had a correction for you yet.
Shit.
Kim's always right. That's why we've not had
that. In our episode on The Descent, which is episode 11, going way back, you said that Gollum crept into his cave eons ago before anybody would remember except maybe Gandalf. But Joe says that actually Smeagol entered the cave in the year 2470 of the Third Age. Bilbo's party at the start of Lord of the Rings is in the year 3001, so that's 531 years later. Gandalf would remember, sure, but so would Galadriel, Elrond, Saruman, and Sauron.
Okay, he got me. I have no idea. I don't even remember talking about Lord of the Rings and that. Or I don't know why. I honestly don't know why I would have said something with Cester Surson, because I have no idea. I don't know when Gollum went into the cave. So sometimes I just say things. Just see how they fly.
I feel like that's not even a correction. You're substantially right. It's just maybe, what is an eon? An eon in our world is maybe different from an eon in Middle Earth. You're right. Gandalf was there before Smeagol went into the cave. I feel like this isn't a correction as more an enhancement.
Oh, thanks, Ross.
Well, that's what I thought at first, because I thought maybe this hinges on the definition of eon. So if you just look it up, it says it's an indefinite and very long period of time. And sure, this is a definite period of time. It's 531 years. And arguably 531 years is not a very long period of time, depending on what frame of reference you're looking at.
I think we should give it to him just for having that much knowledge. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't think it hinges on the definition of eon. I think it's because you specifically said Gandalf is the only one who would be able to remember, but sure. There are several other people who would have been able to remember. So I'm going to say that is a correction.
I've not even read the books. I don't know.
Oh boy.
I don't know where that came from.
You're opening yourself up to a whole lot of hate here, I think.
I know. I've read The Hobbit, but not The Lord of the Rings.
We weren't reviewing The Lord of the Rings. We were reviewing the movie The Descent, so it's just a throwaway line, but fine, I'll take it. So I'm going to send a t-shirt out to Joe whenever the Canada Post strike ends, which is still ongoing. We have no mail in Canada for the last month, but...
Wow.
Where is Joe?
Australia.
Oh.
So it's going to take a while for this t-shirt to get there. And like I said, we'll keep doing this contest until I run out of t-shirts. No promises, because I've got a box that is gradually dwindling. And so we might run out of sizes. And by the time they're gone, I think we'll end this competition and maybe start a merch store if there's interest in that, because our downloads are picking up a little bit lately. So we might finally be able to do that. So today we are watching a Hallmark Christmas movie called The Christmas Quest. Hallmark comes through at the last minute for us and releases a brand new Christmas movie on December 1st, 2024. So this might be the quickest we got to a new movie to review it.
Yeah.
Who wants to summarize this movie for us?
I've got my notes. I could do it.
Okay, if you want it detailed, then go with Ross. If you want just an overview, sarcastic overview, go with me. So whichever one you want.
I think I prefer a sarcastic overview.
Yeah? Okay. So I'm not a huge fan of Hallmark Christmas movies, but this one wasn't that bad.
Blasphemy. No, I was surprisingly entertained.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the actors. They're decent.
Yeah.
So it starts out with an archaeologist. Her name is Stephanie. And she gets called into the office by her dean or like the unnamed higher up academic in the tweed suit, right? And he says, we can finally solve this mystery that I don't remember any of the Icelandic words that you're looking for. Like the treasure of the Yule lads is what she's been looking for, what her mother was looking for decades. What she has been looking for is the treasure of the Yule lads. And he says, you can finally find it. She says, in order to find it, we need to be able to decipher that. And in order to decipher that, we need a key. And he was like, well, I happen to know where one of the keys is because I found this old shipping manifesto from a ship that went from Iceland to Scotland way back in the day. And on it has this Icelandic horn, which is used to transcribe things. So then she jumps on the boat probably a plane to get to Scotland, goes into this basement of this castle on an island, finds this wall thing. Well, first she looks in a box and the box has been opened and what she's looking for isn't there. And then randomly she looks at the wall and the wall has a circle thing on it. And somehow she knows that she has to go and press one of the buttons, which is based on this pattern that's never described to us. So she presses one of the stone buttons and then
it was 2 in, 2 out, 2 in. And then she just had to press 1 to make it match the pattern. It was
with like no mistakes,
like grade
no
2
thinking.
level pattern recognition.
Well, I've watched too
For
many
the
Indiana
Hallmark
Jones.
Channel
You don't
viewers.
just you don't press stone buttons in the bottom of a medieval castle. That's how you lose a head.
Stone buttons don't exist in medieval castles that open up secret
or anywhere
compartments.
really, except in movies.
Archaeology movies. Anyway, so the circle thing opens up and in it she finds the horn. So then she brings the horn back to her university. And then they say, okay, now we need to, so it works as like a Rosetta Stone. So now with this horn, they can now decipher the manuscript that should tell them where the Yule lad treasure is. But they need someone to then decipher Norwegian script. So who's that going to be? Well, it's going to be her handsome ex-husband, who she still has feelings for. So she goes and asks him. He's a bit reluctant, but then he says yes. So then they do this wonderful Christmas holiday archaeological treasure hunting trip to Iceland, where they have to.
Can I just jump in and say that he's not just her handsome ex-husband / runic expert. He's also a part-time Christmas tree seller.
Right.
So
yes,
that's very important.
Of course. Yes. And so then they go to Iceland and then they start like deciphering the manuscript, which I never really see because it's also based on her mom's journal, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about this confusion over what they're actually doing, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah. It was confusing.
The more I dug into it, the more confused I got.
Yeah. Anyway, so it leads them on this like treasure hunt. So they have to find there's 13 Yule lads, which is a Christmas tale in Iceland, which is true. Like they do have the Yule lads, who are 13 mischievous guys who come on each has a day before Christmas, so 13 days leading up to Christmas, and they leave presents for children. Or if they've been naughty, they'll put a potato in your shoe. In the past, they were scarier, and their mom ate children. Their mom is the one that eats children. And there's also they own the Yule cat, which is the giant cat that runs around Iceland at Christmas time. So really cool folklore stuff. So they have to go and find 13 clues, like a scavenger hunt, each one belonging to one of the Yule lads. And the Yule lads all have weird names like candle lighter, doorway sniffer. Like, that's not cool.
They all sound like serial killer nicknames.
Yeah,
like,
they should be in jail.
You know, the Green Bay Killer, the candle stealer, the door latch sniffer. Yeah.
I think
these are all
next time
people
there's
that
a
would have
creepy
killed you
person,
in the 70s.
I need to tell off. I'm going to call them a doorway sniffer. Anyway, so they go on this thing. The first
spoon
one,
licker.
The spoon licker, right? Yeah. So they go on this thing. The first one takes them into a cave. It's a beautiful cave at the behind a water fountain. If you've been to Iceland, there's not water fountain. Waterfall. There's waterfalls. There's waterfalls everywhere. They're beautiful. So they go behind the waterfall. There's this cave. It's gorgeous. Then they're like, well, we're here. We had to find this Yule lad's thing. And they're like, well, he slept in a gully. So where would he hide it? And they're like, I don't know. So she looks behind a rock. And then she's like, I found a lever. Like, no looking around or anything, just right away. So she pulls the lever, and then 3 like Scandinavian like Viking runes come up with the carvings on it for the next clue. But then we meet the villain, who we introduced a little bit to before. We don't know who she is, but we saw her in a crowd watching them, and then scary music happened, so we knew she was the villain. So she ends up, they close, a door to the cave closes, so they're trapped in the cave. The only escape is through the roof, which is way too high for them to get up. So this girl, who's the villain, comes and she says, if you give me your mom's notebook, I'll put down a rope. Finally, they agree. They throw her mom's notebook. She throws down the rope, so they escape, but the girl's gone with the notebook. But luckily, the daughter remembers everything, so they can still continue on with their quest of this treasure hunt. So they go and they find all of the 13 clues, which ends up coming to the culmination of them having to find the last clue in the Natural History Museum on the night when there is a presidential or prime minister, whichever it is for Iceland, event happening. So they have to like get past all that presidential security into the artifacts room that should be highly guarded, even though apparently it wasn't, because they got through it all pretty easily. But the bad guy is there, so that like throws a little chain into it. And then what do they do? So then they get the last clue. They find their way to the Yule lads' treasure. So this is where it's supposed to be. They finally open up this room, and it's supposed to have the gold, like what they're expecting to be gold. And her dean showed up and tried to, he was going to do the whole, like, we're going to sell the gold to make money. And she was like, it belongs in the museum. And he said no. But luckily they made it there before the guys. They make it into the room, and the room is full of just knickknacks. Like family heirloom knickknacks. Like it looks like anybody's
and
grandma's.
Lit candles and electric Christmas lights.
Electric Christmas lights,
part.
right.
That's the thing that stands out the most.
Yes. Lit candles everywhere. Electric Christmas lights that you can see the wires and everything from. It's beautiful, but it's a fire hazard and very modern. And it's just full of knickknacks. Like it looks like any collecting granny's living room, right? Just knickknacks everywhere. Nothing of any value. And so they're like, what is this? What's going on? Like, is this a Yule lad's treasure? And then she finds her mom's locket that she gave to her mom years ago at Christmas sitting there. And then she realized that her mom didn't give up looking for the Yule lad's treasure. The mom did find the Yule lad's treasure because she was there, and realized that the treasure all along was valuing what you had in the first place. Which then both spoke to each other that they have each other and they should get back together because they really do love each other and they should value what they have.
I gotta say, that's a hilarious prank from the mother to be like, haha, you spent your entire life looking for the treasure that you thought I didn't find, but turns out I found it. Way to waste your life.
You're welcome. Yeah, so I'm sure Ross would have done a much better job, but.
No, you got all the main things there, I would say.
I'm sure we can still go through all of Ross's notes and have a lot to say about it. So, mistakes in this movie, factual or historical errors?
The one or two, possibly.
Well, again, it's the whole archaeologists as vandals and treasure hunters, not archaeologists.
We've done a number of treasure hunt movies in the last few episodes, like National Treasure, As Above, So Below. Did we do another treasure hunt one somewhere in the last few episodes?
Well, I mean, this one hits a lot of the same beats as National Treasure, even down to the swanky black tie gala that they have to infiltrate.
Yes.
But it doesn't do it quite so well because it's got, a Hallmark budget. But it was surprisingly entertaining, I thought. Maybe I just have a soft spot for Lacey Chabert from Mean Girls and Party of Five, which I kind of grew up with.
And more recently from 15 Hallmark Christmas movies, apparently. This is her 15th Hallmark Christmas movie.
Good for her.
Cash that check. Yeah, get that money.
I think it was also nice because it wasn't about proving Santa's existence.
Well, okay. Let's talk about the Icelandic Christmas folklore, because I think we went over this probably in the Rare Exports episode.
But or Troll maybe as well.
Mm.
Oh yeah, maybe, yeah. My family is Icelandic. I've never been to Iceland, but my grandparents spoke Iceland at home, and
Oh, wow.
like they lived right next door, so I spent a lot of time with them. We had I had these Icelandic Christmas traditions sort of like layered on top of Santa Claus. Santa Claus was the main one, but I grew up with these Yule lads, to the extent that if you Googled my name until very recently, one of the first things that would come up was a drawing that I made when I was 8 years old for an Icelandic Canadian newspaper called the Lögberg Heimskringla.
Wow.
And I
so
believe I
cute.
drew Door Slammer, her
Brilliant.
the Scaler. So I'm very familiar with this folklore. And the main thing here is that there's no treasure of the Yule lads. That's entirely made up
I googled
because
that. I couldn't find anything.
there's nothing. It doesn't exist. It's like they went on an archaeology quest to find Santa Claus's lost treasure, which is kind of what Rare Exports does, except Rare Exports is a hilarious dark comedy, which was excellent. And this one, they just want you to actually believe that the Yule lads might actually be real and have a treasure, even though they are Christmas elves who sneak down gullies to steal milk from your cows and slam doors to wake you up at night and eat all your yogurt and leave you presents in your shoes or rotten potatoes if you're bad.
And their mother
they're all about
eats
leaving
children.
gifts.
So if they're real, their mother is real, right?
And their cat roams the countryside in December and eats people who don't have a new Christmas sweater for Christmas Eve.
I thought that's harsh. Like, it's cool. I like the Yule cat, but it's harsh that, like, what if no one gets you new clothes?
Yeah, there's a real classism issue. I think that's why my ancestors left Iceland. I think there was a big
They
class
didn't have a Christmas jumper
thing.
and they had to leave
Gotta
before
get
the
out of
cat
here.
got them. But I mean, I feel like they did a fairly good job of explaining the Icelandic traditions. I mean, I only know about them from Kim's supervisor, who is Icelandic, who we worked with in Durham, who explained the Yule lads and had books and stuff about them. So I knew about them from that. And also, they did a quite good job of explaining them and other Icelandic traditions as well, like the kind of book giving on Christmas Eve. They touched on that too, which is quite nice.
The Jólabókaflóð.
Yeah.
The Christmas book
which is not a volcano. But a nice kind of literary tradition of giving family a book to read on Christmas Eve.
I love that idea. We give pajamas. We get new pajamas on Christmas Eve. I like the idea of a new book.
The Christmas book flood started post-World War II when all these countries were sort of isolated as they were rebuilding. And so you couldn't get a lot of stuff imported to Iceland, but you could get paper. And so there were lots of books to give as presents. And then it really started when there was, what is it called? The catalog of books or something like this. It's just like a catalog of all the books published in Iceland that year. And I believe it's still going on, where it's sent out to every house for free before Christmas to be like, these are all the new books this year.
Oh,
Buy
wow.
them for Christmas. And then the other thing about Iceland is that it has a really long literary tradition going back to like the sagas, right? Where they wrote down their sort of oral history like hundreds of years ago. But Iceland has the highest number of published authors per capita of any country in the world. 1 in 10 people in Iceland will publish a book in their lifetime.
Holy cow, good for them.
I think it's usually like at the top of the kind of adult literacy globally as well. Like, 99.999 repeating. There's maybe one person in Iceland who doesn't read, and that's it.
It's Lepalúði, Grela's lazy husband, who doesn't really have any role in the stories other than to sit at home in the cave and do nothing
and not read. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those films where if you think even slightly about any particular part, like a badly made Christmas jumper, it'll just kind of unravel in front of your eyes. It's like, yeah, why do the Yule lads have a treasure? That's not a thing. Why would they leave clues? They kind of almost have a throwaway line to explain this. Why leave all these clues for a treasure that you're trying to hide? And
yes,
what's Carlotta, the bad woman, says, oh, so that the person that finds it is worthy. Okay. Well, they've probably
I'm
done
like, well, why are you trying to stop me then? Let me prove that I'm worthy,
Yeah.
right? I thought that's what the clues were for.
Yeah, and again, like you said, the clues are sort of grade 2 level difficulty. I mean, it's just, they almost don't make sense. They're that simple. Begin as the bishop does on a square, like the first clue. I mean, obviously that's to do with chess. It's not to do with canonical law or, the ecclesiastical hierarchy of Iceland. It's about chess. And that's what it turns out to be. They go to the bishop's home church, and there's a chessboard on the floor, and they just have to lift up one of the tiles.
They have to vandalize the church.
They do, and again,
she was super willing to break into that church when it turns out the door was unlocked,
keys and everything. But yeah, they lifted this wholesale from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Going to a church, patterned floor, looking for clues, vandalism. It's all there. X marks the spot.
Yeah.
And then the next clue, light in the darkness will show the way. I mean, I have no idea how they got from that clue to where they ended up, which was, is that where they go to the cave?
Yeah, it was a cave.
Yeah.
I had no idea where they got that
There's
part.
several 100,000 caves in Iceland.
Yeah.
Because it's a volcanic island. But yeah, all right. To see the unseen, you must hide with me. I mean, what? That's one that leads them to the waterfall, I think.
Yeah. And
because
then
it has
gully.
coordinates on it. I mean,
oh yeah, okay. Well, let's finish up these clues and come back to those coordinates because I have something to say about that.
The next one, between valley and I can't read my own writing here. Between valley and peak, 30 steps to the left to find treasure you seek. So this is written in presumably medieval Icelandic, but somehow it still rhymes in modern English.
I think we can start a whole treasure hunt movie bingo list for that because every single one has rhyming stuff translated from an ancient language.
And that's the one that takes them to the lava tube which is full of booby traps. Great. And they get out of that, and then the next one is where the poet lays his head. Okay, and somehow that works out. It's some Icelandic poet who I think was the one who wrote the original journal about the treasure that Stephanie's mum found. So he's the poet, and they somehow work out that the door of his library has the clue in it, and the door of his library is in the museum, and that's the one they have to break into the Prime Minister's celebration to get. And then on a fresh pole of oak, guarded by a trusted friend, once in hand, your quest nears its end. That's the library door. I mean, any of them could really be anything. And then, what is the very last one?
Something to do with the fire, right?
It's about, you have to start where you begin, and that's that they kind of assume that means Dimberger, which is where the Yule lads are supposed to live. But then, once they've given that clue to the evil Victor Grimes, who is, I think, basically the John Hammond of the story. He's just like a rich benefactor who throws money around, as well as being an evil Scotsman putting on an English accent. She suddenly realizes after sending him away on this kind of abandoned quest that actually it means it starts at the cathedral where they all started out. And that's where they find the underground tunnel with very well electric supplied lights leading the way to the nothing. Is the door where the treasure is. I mean, who maintains this? Who's the janitor here? Why has nobody before these two dimwit Americans realized that there's a really well-maintained path to nowhere underneath the main cathedral in Reykjavik, the capital city?
That's probably the janitor's special place. Like, it's probably all his belongings, his collection, his treasure. He has no idea that all these obscure cues are leading people to this. Yeah.
And broken their way into his Christmas grotto that he sets up for the underprivileged kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. Right, I'm going to briefly step out.
Okay.
He's so frustrated. He's got to take a breath.
I was reading some comments on this on the Hallmark movie Reddit, and there was There was one comment that said they thought there was going to be a twist. I don't know if we mentioned there's this couple that they meet in Reykjavik where they find a cat running around and then they return it home and they're invited inside by this couple. And the cat's name is Jólakötturinn. It's the Yule cat. The cat's named after the Yule cat.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a comment that said they were expecting a twist ending where that couple is Grela and I just said his name, Lepalúði,
Mm-hmm.
and that they were going to open up that chamber and it was full of lights already lit, and that those two were going to step out and it was going to be the twist that was them all along, since they had the Jólakötturinn with them already, which I feel like that would have helped explain a lot of the ending about how there was an active sort of residence in that room and all the lights were lit.
Yeah, I could see that. That would have been fine. It still would have had the same message, right?
Yeah.
I just don't like what I find. I mean, I guess it's like this with all Christmas movies. So in Christmas movies, you have this, like, everybody, the basic assumption is to believe in Santa Claus, and that it's the rare person who doesn't believe in Santa Claus, right? So you exist in this world where this magic is real, and we're supposed to suspend belief and believe that. And so in this one, we're supposed to believe that the Yule lads were real, and they don't seem all that fussed about it. Right? Like, if, I don't know. They didn't seem really all that taken back by the magic of it, right?
It's as if everybody in the movie just believes, oh yeah, the Yule Lads legend is based on real people and real events.
Yeah, but with
and
magic,
there's no question about that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's necessarily magic in the real Yule Lad story. There's just an evil old troll woman who eats children and a giant cat that eats people. You don't have to be magic to be a giant cat. And then all the Yule Lads just do regular stuff. They just harass sheep and they peep in windows and they sniff under doors and they steal meat with meat hooks and they follow children to steal their candles so they can eat them. None of that's really magic.
But I mean, but their whole existence kind of relies on magic, like the idea of them staying hidden and like staying out of society. Like, it's the same as Santa Claus, right? Like, a lot, probably if you get into it, a lot of what they do relies on this assumption that they have special powers to be able to disappear into the night or show up somewhere or do things, carry so many potatoes that they can put them in the shoes of every child in Iceland. And I think a giant cat is magic.
There's an unbelievable aspect to it.
Yeah. I guess that's what I mean by magic. Like a fantasy aspect to it.
Yeah, Santa's not a magician. He just has the power to hear everything every child says all the time. But he's not magic.
But it's based on magic.
Although, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, yeah, we're splitting hairs about what magic means, I think. So fine, they're magic, I agree.
I think magic, like, when I think of, I'm thinking just like the sparkly, like, array, like stars, like, magic, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I imagine that for Santa Claus, but growing up with the Yule Lads, I never imagined that for the Yule Lads. They're just little elves that are just grounded in reality.
No, they're not. It's a magic.
I don't know that elves are necessarily magic when they're just little short people that, well, and the thing is, I don't know that it's ever spoken that the elves are supposed to be short, but in my mind as a child, they were always little short elves.
They always seem like they're maybe large in the drawings that I saw.
And in the folklore, originally, sometimes it said that they were giants. So,
yeah. Well, they have a
I'm
giant
not sure
cat.
where I got that idea.
So they have also, like, every single clue that they find, right? Like that piece of fabric that they light to get the coordinates, and all of these things, these little artifacts that they find that belong to the Yule Lads, are way more fascinating than the treasure that they were hoping to find. Right? Like,
well, I mean, they were hoping to find a more fascinating treasure.
I guess. But even if you found gold, like, gold, it's not that interesting, right? The piece of ancient paper that you light to show magical, like magic, see, it comes up.
Yeah.
The
evidence of trolls. That's way more interesting than gold.
It's way more interesting. Yeah.
Ross, you're probably most interested in the giant cat.
Yeah, totally. Which, I mean, I don't know much about the giant cat, but it's interesting that they managed to get a kind of cat subplot in there as well, and that they find a stray cat on the streets of Reykjavik. I mean, I don't know. Do people randomly just pick up cats in cities they're visiting?
Hello.
I think you would just assume.
Hi.
Sorry. Sorry. Apart from Kim. Yeah. But the ones you pick up, Kim, don't have collars on, which clearly state their address. Do you?
No.
No,
If it had a
exactly.
collar with it, I assume that a cat with a collar, it knows what it's doing. It knows where it's going.
Yeah.
It knows where it's
That's
where
it.
it wants to be, right? Yeah.
If they just left it alone, they wouldn't have gone to the nice ex-ambassador to Washington house and his wife that makes the cookies, who then out them from their false names at the president's soiree. So I mean that could have been kind of done with completely. But then they wouldn't have got the kind of sweet scenes of old married couples being cute together, which is a big part of it.
I don't know if
And
it's
the real treasure is the Christmas we made along the way.
I don't know if it's me, like if I just watch too many scary movies or if I just have a negative personality. But like if I walked into a stranger's house, even if I was returning their lost cat, and they said, "Oh, you should come like immediately. Hi, thank you for the cat. Come and decorate this bread with me, and then we'll sit around and decorate our Christmas tree with my husband." And I've known you for 10 minutes. I would be like, "Okay, you're gonna try and eat me, and we need to leave, right?" Like there would be nothing pleasant going through my head. I was like, "They're gonna lock us in the basement. It's what's gonna like. Don't eat anything they offer you."
The key here is that they're in Iceland and there's
Yes, it is.
300,000 people in the entire country. I think I might have told this story on another episode as well, but when my parents visited Iceland, they just literally looked up people in Iceland with the same last name and contacted them on Facebook. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we're cousins. Come and stay at your ancestral farm for a few days."
Cool.
And just popped in and hung out there. I mean, it's not our last name is not a common Icelandic last name, so sure, if you got the same last name, we're probably cousins. They figured it out, and they just went and stayed there. So,
but
Yeah.
I mean that's the other thing that they actually did quite well is that they used Icelandic actors in some of the roles for this who were speaking Icelandic, but also they had Icelandic names. So I'm always fascinated by naming traditions in other countries. So I'm interested to hear from you, Josh, about this. So it's a patronymic naming system where your surname is your father's name, suffixed by son or daughter as to which one you are. So there's lots of Olaf's sons and Olaf's daughters. There's lots of Sven's sons and Sven's daughters. Surely, whatever your surname is, anyone who's got a dad with that first name is going to have the same surname, or is it different?
I mean, this stopped when Icelanders moved to North America, as far as I know. I don't think that's kept up anywhere here, but as I understand it in Iceland, yes, there's not a lot of names because your last name is always just your father's first name with son or daughter at the end. Apart from, of course, my family, who has not that style of name. My name's Lyndall, which is it's a place name.
Okay.
I actually learned a little bit more about it when I was talking to Frederick Trussaham on his podcast, because he's Swedish, and Lyndall is a Swedish name originally. Yeah. And he told me it is a soldier's name because when people join the military, you have so many people and everybody has the same name because there's only so many names because you're always named after your father's first name. And so instead of calling everybody Johnson, you name people after where they're from. So Lyndall means from the valley of linden trees. And so that's how, this is what he tells me, that's how my name comes about, because I was wondered why my name is a place name instead of a family name like that.
Understand.
But yes, in Iceland they still use that family naming system where your last name is your father's first name with son or daughter at the end of it. Let's talk about the journal at the center of this movie, because I was quite confused about it. So after the movie starts off with her mother in some sort of ruin. And then it cuts to her mother telling her the bedtime story about the Yule lads, and then that transitions to her telling the story of the Yule lads and her mother's expedition to a lecture hall. And she describes it as Magnus Olafsson's manuscript, or the Magnus Olafsson manuscript. She says Magnus Olafsson was a Icelandic author who compiled all these stories about the Yule lads. As far as I can tell, Magnus Olafsson was not a famous Icelandic author. There are two very famous kings from history named Magnus Olafsson, but I couldn't find anything about an author. And so she describes that the manuscript, she calls it the Magnus Olafsson manuscript. She says it came from Magnus Olafsson's library. But in the next breath, she said it was discovered over 3 decades ago by archaeologist Joan Hamilton, who is her mother. And so her mother discovered it in 1994.
In a guy's library?
Yeah, how can it be from the guy's... It was... And I was never sure about... She said Magnus Olafsson was a wealthy patron of the arts. And so did Magnus Olafsson write this book several hundred years ago, and she was excavating his library to find this manuscript? Or is he a modern guy who's a wealthy patron of the arts who found this manuscript and then somehow his mother also found it later? Or did his mother find it and then somehow it came into his hands and ended up in his library, and then she got it back from his library and called it the Magnus Olafsson manuscript even though her mother's the one who found it? I was very confused about exactly what we're talking about.
Well, I know the answer.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And the answer is, I don't care.
I'm going to say it's the first one.
Yeah. It's whatever you need it to be.
That they excavated. She excavated his library.
Okay. So did Magnus Olafsson write it then in runes?
I think so.
Because
it's
written in...
Yeah, I think that's the point.
I mean, it's essentially the Grail Diary from Last Crusade, except shitter.
Yeah.
Because it's not written by Sean Connery.
Yeah.
All right. And then in her presentation, she shows some images of it, and she has some runes written vertically. And I tried for quite a while to figure out exactly what these runes said. And I'm not an expert in runes, so the best that I got was O Thu O Dua Ua Kuau, which is probably wrong because I don't know what that means. They're based on the runic scripts I could find. They were almost all O's and A's and U's, and I don't know what that means. So I'm not sure. I thought sometimes you can, like, when there's like an artifact or a script in a movie, you can just Google search and be like, oh, this is the thing that they took for their graphic design to stick into their movie. And I thought I might be able to do that, but I couldn't actually find it.
If I were ever to make a movie like this, I would make the runes spell out "you're a nerd," so that anybody that did that like you.
Or why are you looking this up?
Yeah.
Get a life. I think they actually did that in Futurama. Futurama's got various alien scripts that appear throughout.
Yeah.
And often they're insulting messages to the people that bother to translate them, which I think is great.
Yeah, I love that story. Because Futurama came out in 1999, before the internet is what it is today. And so they had a secret alien language with a certain key. And the key was an ad for Slurm, where there was one Slurm ad written in English and one Slurm ad written in the alien script, and that was your cipher.
That's
and then they had your Rosetta Stone. Let's get into that next. And they thought it was going to take a few weeks or months for people to figure it out, and it was within hours. It was on the internet that people had figured out the whole language. So that was pretty interesting. Let's talk about the Rosetta Stone. They say that this horn of Jurgen Windcaller. That's a little Easter egg for my Elder Scrolls fans here. The Yule horn of Dimmerborgir. They say it's a cipher like the Rosetta Stone, and I was wondering, is it correct to call the Rosetta Stone a cipher? Is that technically true?
I have no idea.
I think a cipher is a code, isn't it? So if you're
a cipher, like the Rosetta Stone is used to decipher hieroglyphics.
It
but
wasn't made
it's
for
not
that
a cipher.
purpose. Yeah,
No,
it wasn't.
it's a key. It's a key.
Exactly.
Would be how you describe it, I guess. But it's a sciencey sounding word, and in a Hallmark film, they've almost got it right.
Okay, let's talk about sciencey sounding words. Let me find this next thing here. Okay, they get one of the clues. It says something, but it also has several symbols that they were interpreting, which apparently were also numbers. And she's like, what if they're not symbols? What if they're just numbers? And they're like, oh, they're coordinates. And so they go to a map. They're like, okay, so the numbers represent longitude and latitude. But if that's the case, these numbers are way off. And then the guy says, yeah, unless the Vikings used additive and subtractive properties. And then she says, okay, so for 14, they would use the symbols 10 and 4. Nice. Does this mean anything?
I just don't understand why you would see numbers and you would think the first thing you think is that they must be letters. And then like the second thing you think once you figure it out is, oh no, they're numbers. Like,
well, one of the things I know about runes are the runes can be alphabet letters, but each rune can also be a symbol for a concept. So they can kind of like the hieroglyphics, right? Hieroglyphics are like the hieroglyphic is a bird, but the bird is also like a phoneme, and so you can use it either way. Is that true of hieroglyphics?
As far as I know, yeah.
I think so.
For both.
And as far as I know, that's also true of runes, because long after runes were used for language, they were also used for like magic spells. Like I've got a couple of books of like runic magic spells here, Icelandic magic spells.
Wow. Does it tell you about the necro trousers in your book of Icelandic magic?
It absolutely does. We talked about those before. Kim, you said you saw those in Iceland, or the reconstruction of them.
Broke my heart.
But I mean, that's something that almost all languages do. I mean, even English. X is the letter X, but it's also 10 if you're fancy. V, I. These are all things that I is 2.
Yep.
I mean, it's totally dumbed down, I think, for the audience. But that's what you want from a Christmas movie. You don't want to have to think too hard about it. You just want to switch off and watch attractive people called Stephanie and Chase. I mean, isn't that the most American name you've ever heard?
Yeah,
Chase
definitely.
Baxter.
Chase Baxter. He was dreamy.
I mean, he was a very attractive man, I have to say. He's a very, very handsome fellow.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing about the longitude, though, is even if the Vikings did use additive and subtractive properties in their numbers, which I still don't know what that means, they weren't using the modern geographic coordinate system because that wasn't established until the late 1800s. The Vikings, I don't know if the Vikings used a coordinate system at all, but
I wouldn't have thought so. Certainly not the Greenwich Meridian.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not gonna find these coordinates on a modern map like they're trying to do.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe if, as we were discussing earlier, this manuscript is not hundreds of years old, but it's just from some guy who was writing in the 1960s, then maybe it would have. I don't know.
But then why all the riddles? Because you have to go through it in order to be prepared for the lesson once you get there.
And also, why the kind of generations of treasure protectors like Carlotta, again, lifted from Last Crusade.
Yes.
Speaking of the actors in this movie, we have Lacey Chabert. Chabert, is that how you pronounce her name? Most famous for Mean Girls, I would say.
Yeah.
More famous recently for doing 15 Hallmark Christmas movies, and right now...
In a row?
Well, maybe.
I think they're always done in rows, yeah.
I think she's got like 3 or 4 this year.
Wow.
One of the other Christmas movies she has this year, which is a Netflix movie, so I don't think this counts to her 15 Hallmark Christmas movies, is a movie called Hot Frosty, which I'm seeing all over the place, which is about a snowman that comes to life. Now, last year, we did a movie called Saving Christmas Spirit, which was a Scottish archaeology movie. So next year, Kim, what is your family heritage? We'll have to find a Christmas movie that takes place where you have some ancestral connection.
Scotland. So this could count for me too.
And we did visit Scotland in this movie as well.
Yeah.
Let's come back to that. Saving Christmas Spirit stars Ashley Newbro, who had previously been in a movie, and we talked about this on that episode, called Snowman's, where she falls in love with a snowman that comes to life.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
And so both of our Hallmark-style Christmas archaeology movies star actors who also star in movies where they fall in love with a snowman, which I think is crazy. I also think it's crazy that Netflix remade Snowman's from 2017, apparently, or stole the idea to do Hot Frosty. How many movies can you have where a woman falls in love with a sexy snowman?
Probably more than zero, which is what you'd expect.
I can't wait.
And then there's also Jack Frost, of which there's 2 films, I think, with that name. One where he's a friendly snowman that comes back to life, played by Michael Keaton, and one where he's a sadistic serial killer who murders Shannon Elizabeth in the bat.
But these ones, these newer ones are like, they come back as boy toys.
Yeah.
The Hot Frosty one.
Yeah, like they're Chads or whatever they're called. Kens.
Chodes.
No, I don't think it's Chodes. I think that's something else.
Yeah, I guess that could be the new 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. How many degrees of separation from falling in love with a snowman that comes back to life?
Okay, we were briefly in Scotland in this. Yes.
Yeah. Speaking as a Scots person, you're not allowed to just go into abandoned castles and open boxes and press stone buttons on walls if they exist. That's frowned upon here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in North America, but certainly here you're not allowed to do that.
We don't have castles.
Yeah, true. Well, you do. You've got like your McMansions and you've got White Castle.
A little bit different.
Not in Canada.
I don't think we have White Castle in Canada. No. Ross, did you recognize that castle? We see it very briefly in an establishing shot.
No, I didn't.
I looked it up. I matched an image. It is, I'm not sure how to pronounce Scottish here, Kilchurn Castle.
Okay, that's it.
Kilchurn.
Yeah, where is that?
It's somewhere in the west in those islands, kind of.
Okay.
It's a 15th century castle that was destroyed in 1760 by lightning. And they really yada yada over how this horn got to this castle. They say this is established in the meeting early on with the wealthy benefactor who says he's got the manifest of a ship that was going from Iceland to Scotland in the late 1800s. And so the horn is on the manifest. How did it end up in this castle? The castle was already destroyed 100 years before that. Why did it end up in the castle? Why would it still be there?
Why would he make a special hole in the wall and a mechanism to hide it?
Yeah.
How do you spell the name of the castle?
Kilchurn.
All right.
It's beautiful.
I'm just looking it up.
Sometimes the way I do research is I just search for Scottish castle, and I just search the Google images until I find the one that matches the screenshot from the movie, which works pretty well most of the time.
I actually might have seen this one.
Okay, so it's near Oban.
Yeah.
So it's about south of Glencoe. Probably be a good 3 or 4 hours drive from me. But yeah, it was a very nice castle.
I think I did drive by this one on my way to Inverness Castle from Williams.
I assumed it was CGI.
No, I remember seeing a castle like that, like on its own island thing.
I guess the most famous sort of castle on its own island is Eilean, which is on the road to Skye, which is very, very famous. It's got like millions of postcards and all sorts of tourist hats.
This one had no tourist, like there wasn't even really a sign for it. It was just off, like you would miss it if you didn't look. So I think that's it.
And you know what? When I was searching for Scottish castle ruins, I had the thought that, they didn't need to actually use a Scottish castle. They could have used an establishing shot of any castle, because obviously they didn't fly to Scotland and film inside this castle, right?
Yeah.
So I suppose it's pretty good attention to detail that they actually used a real castle in Scotland when they could have used any castle. They could have filmed a North American castle without having to travel anywhere.
Yeah.
One of our famous castles that we just established exist.
Yeah. But they did at least fly to Reykjavik. So it was quite nice to see that they actually were in Iceland for some of their establishing shots in front of the cathedral, on the Rainbow Road, that kind of stuff. So yeah, they really did go to Iceland, which is something.
Yeah.
And most of the actors are Icelandic as well. So, I mean, the pronunciation of everything is fine, except when Lacey Chabert is saying it.
Or Chase.
Okay, so they break into the... Now, let me get the terminology correct here. They break into the Christmas Gala fundraiser black tie invite only at the National Museum, which is what he reads off the invite, hosted by the Prime Minister. And in there, they're speaking English in their terrible fake Icelandic accents, which sound more Russian than anything. But everybody there is speaking English.
In Icelandic accent, yeah.
And they're pretending to be Icelanders. And so why is nobody suspicious that they're speaking English to them?
I know.
When they're claiming to be well-known Icelanders.
Yeah, you just speak Icelandic.
It's also weird that they speak to another Icelander in their terribly accented English. Like,
yeah,
that made no sense at all. I made a note about that. Why is Lacey Chabert speaking to an Icelandic man in terribly accented English rather than just, why is he not trying to speak to her in Icelandic?
Icelandic, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody at that party is speaking English for some reason.
Which almost every Icelander can do, I guess.
I'm sure that every Icelander can speak English, but they
maybe in international,
as far as I know,
settings,
speak Icelandic to themselves.
Yeah, but pretty much the only non-Icelandic actor apart from Chase and Stephanie is the bad guy, Victor Grimes, who is a quite well-known Scottish actor who's been in a lot of things. But I was quite glad to see that he didn't use his natural Scottish accent, but he put on an English accent to be even more evil.
He's a good bad guy.
He is a good bad guy. He's been a bad guy in lots of things. He's a bad guy in Fantastic Beasts. He's a bad guy, I think, in Ugly Betty as well. He's in a few episodes of that.
I have just a few little things I wanted to ask about. So she says at some point that the clues are only accessible in the days leading up to Christmas. But was that true?
No.
It didn't seem like any of these clues were only accessible during this week.
Yeah. That waterfall is clearly open all year round.
If anything, it would be more difficult to access during Christmas than other times of the year, right?
Yeah, more tourists.
And wintry.
To be fair, they did sort of yada yada over 9 out of 13 of the clues. I thought it was...
Classic montage.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't want to watch a movie where they go through 13 separate clues, but it's like, they go through 2, hand wave over the next 9, and then do the last 2.
But what was the clue for the door sniffer?
You don't want to know.
Door sniffer, by the way, has a giant nose that he uses to sniff under doors. Also, during that montage, it has a pretty nice Christmas song that's sung in both English and Icelandic, which was kind of nice. But during that montage, they're walking through these tunnels in a glacier, which are like a tourist thing in Iceland. But they find one of their clues on a pedestal, and it seems to be a glowing vial of Jurassic Park DNA. And what is this clue? Why are none of the other tourists asking about this glowing vial in the middle of these ice caves? What is this?
Yeah. Lots of questions could be asked.
It kind of seemed like probably every year, a few dozen tourists come through and solve this scavenger hunt.
Add a couple of candles or troll dolls to the treasure.
Yeah.
Maybe it's viral marketing for a new Icelandic tourist campaign where they're going to have the Yule Lads treasure hunt, and people can come over Christmas and search for the treasure. Oh, that's another thing. I was wondering, if you go to Iceland over Christmas, Iceland is a tiny little country. Do you think anything is open on Christmas? They're at a bar on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that everything is closed in Iceland on Christmas Day. I have a feeling you're not going to get anything that's open.
I don't know. I mean, Scotland's a very small country, but we definitely have pubs open on Christmas Day and Boxing Day and New Year's Day. Maybe not
Scotland
1st of
has
January,
a famous drinking
hungover.
culture.
And so does Iceland. I mean, if you've ever met an Icelander, the fact that
I've
they
met
have
Icelanders.
Yeah.
Certainly in Manitoba, the Icelanders love drinking.
There's a reason why in Iceland it's £7 or $20 for a beer. Because if it was any cheaper, nothing would ever get done.
I don't know how much it's actually drunk or how much it's just a tourist sort of thing, but there's a drink in Iceland that's commonly referred to as Icelandic Black Death, which is Brennivin. It's just a caraway flavored liquor, which you can get that in Canada now. I don't actually enjoy it, but it's got a very distinct taste.
That fermented skate that they had, I tried the fermented shark or whatever. You stop when you're doing an Icelandic road trip, you stop at this place that has it and you get like this tiny little piece of it just to say that you ate it. I feel bad about eating shark, but you also want to support.
Was it delicious?
No, it was terrible.
Did it taste like ammonia?
And fish. And I don't like either.
And nappies. That's what I've heard it tastes like.
I guess so.
So who's tasted an nappy to compare? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
On the other hand, when I was a kid, I really liked harðfiskur. It's hardfish is what it translates to. It's just dried codfish. And you open up the package, which we can get in Canada, or at least we used to be able to. It's just a piece of dried fish, and it smells horrible like fish, but you actually like put butter on it. It's really good.
Yeah, you sold
in my
that
memory,
well.
I haven't had it in a while. I remember taking it to school when I was a kid, open up my container, and the whole room smells like fish.
Did you get beat up?
No.
Not for that specifically.
For other things, which we don't need to talk about, probably. I
am a nerd who became an academic. I definitely got beat up.
Oh, yeah. I think we can all say that. Are there rules? So I know that for a lot of Scandinavian countries have a very pungent fish dish, which is their kind of national thing. You've got the surströmming in Sweden. These kind of fermented herrings, which are illegal in private residences. You're not allowed to open them in a rented apartment. Is there any kind of rules in Iceland for that with your fermented shark, or is that no? Just go for it.
I don't know that. I've never personally been to Iceland. My parents and my brother went a few years ago, but I haven't actually been. All of my cultural knowledge of Iceland comes through connections to the Icelandic community in Canada.
Yeah, I don't really remember. I mean, I had a lot of my meals, probably Una made them. I don't remember, but I wouldn't have ordered a fish meal, so I just remember the bakeries were so good. The pastries, and it's a very pro chocolate milk, adults drinking chocolate milk country, which I really enjoyed.
That's the thing I look forward to most about Christmas is making all the Icelandic Christmas treats, which the Manitoba Icelandic culture has sort of like canalized. It's sort of differed over the last 100 years. We have similar stuff, but we have
word.
Not from my perspective.
Improved. They've improved the recipes.
The way I feel like it has happened is it's like become very standardized here because it's like a way of preserving a tradition so it doesn't get swamped out by the rest of all the cultures in Canada. Whereas in Iceland, I feel like a lot of the foods, the sort of Christmas foods are, from what I understand, more flexible in their interpretations, but here they're very specific. So we're like a few weeks away from Christmas. I guess we're 2 weeks away from Christmas. I better get on the ball here.
God.
But in the next few weeks, I'm going to make a vinatarta, which is it's essentially a prune cake. It's a layer cake where you have very thin layers that are almost like a sugar cookie, and then you have a layer of a prune filling in between that, and you have to get 9 layers into it, and then you cut it into little pieces, so it's a very stripy, like a zebra stripy cake.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It's very good. And it's hard to make because you got to get all the layers super thin so you can get 9 layers. Has to have 9 layers in Manitoba to be a real cake. I think this is in Iceland. It's more flexible. You can do it with raspberry jam, or you can do it with all kinds of things. But it has to be prunes in Manitoba. It has to be 9 layers. And then there's pannukakor, which is Icelandic crepes. And I think in Iceland, they're more of a traditional dessert crepe. But in Manitoba, they're very specifically rolled up very tightly with sugar and cinnamon. And they're cut into little pieces. So they're like a little tiny roll, like a little log. And you eat them like almost like a cookie. And both of these things, you have to make them a few days in advance at least and put them in the freezer because you have like the dry crepe or the dry cookie part. And then you have the sugar in the pannukakor, and you have the prune filling in the cake, and in the freezer they sort of meld together to make a gooey, really kind of goodness. So you have to make them in advance and age them slightly.
Oh, sounds amazing.
That sounds good. What about the things they were making in the film? Is that real? The
bread?
The loaf of bread.
The snowman / Christmas tree that they were making.
I'm not certain about that. There's the leaf bread, which is an Icelandic thing, but that's not something that was very common in the New Iceland community that I'm familiar with here. But it is an Iceland thing.
Okay.
I don't know that much about the leaf bread. Did you notice that they have 3 decorated Christmas trees in their hotel room?
Their hotel room was
that seemed a little
insane.
unlikely to me.
I don't know where they got archaeologist, and he's another
Christmas
academic
tree seller.
and
a Christmas tree
seller. I don't know
salesman
why they were in that.
who reads ancient Norse runes.
But
I guess
they're being bankrolled by the bad guy.
But
So
then
he's
why was
paying
she
for
surprised that he
They-
wanted to make money? Like, obviously, I don't know. It just seems very strange that she was very naive with what was happening.
I thought all along that her goal was to make money because it's never explicitly stated.
No,
Like they're
that she
searching for a
cares.
treasure. If
Yeah.
you're searching for a treasure, you're searching for money. If you're an archaeologist, you're not searching for a treasure.
Yeah.
Like all of the places that all of the devices that they activated along the way, that's way more interesting to an archaeologist, which is something these treasure hunt movies never think about, right? Like Indiana Jones starts off by destroying an entire temple to steal 1 golden monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he doesn't stop there.
No.
Okay, last thing we should mention is Dimmaborgir, the area in Iceland where Grela and her husband and the Yule lads are supposed to live in a cave, is a real region of Iceland, which is geologically really interesting. Apparently an episode of Game of Thrones was filmed there, except I never watched Game of Thrones. But did you read anything about that?
No. The entire landscape of Iceland is just breathtaking and surreal. It's like an alien planet. So beautiful and, different than anything I've seen.
Dimmaborgir in a lot of traditions was considered like the gates of hell or things like this. And basically what happened is there was a big lava flow that covered a swamp. And so this very thick sea of lava caused the water underneath it in the soil to boil, and it created these columns rising up through the lava. And then as the lava moved away, you're left with these pillars of volcanic rock, and it does look very much like an alien landscape, which is pretty neat. They don't actually go there in the movie as far as I know, but they talk about it a lot.
So in Game of Thrones, Dimmaborgir is used as north of the wall, so where the wildlings live. Which is, fairly on the nose, I would say.
It's beautiful.
And so could we maybe tie like stories of trolls, which are kind of common in Scandinavian folklore, Icelandic folklore, in Iceland associated with volcanic regions, sort of sulfur springs, that kind of stuff, volcanic vents. Could we argue for some kind of connection between these kind of geological features and kind of troll things? Like, are people kind of smelling weird smells and hearing strange sounds and attributing them to trolls instead of to volcanoes.
I mean, it smells very strongly like sulfur everywhere in Iceland and the water.
I think we can definitely say that because Iceland was settled from Norway, and we covered the movie Troll, which is a Norwegian movie, and they talk about, Norway has a long tradition of trolls, and they talk specifically about this mountain range that was made of trolls who turned to stone. And so I think coming from Norway, where you already have a tradition of trolls, which is already based on the rocky landscape, and settling Iceland, where you have, again, a very unique rocky landscape, I think it's pretty safe to say that the tradition is heavily influenced by the geology of Scandinavia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the last thing I wanted to talk about is I grew up with my Icelandic grandparents living next door. And so whenever after school, I would go straight to their house before my parents got home. And the belief in supernatural stuff, or the folklore surrounding it, not necessarily the belief, but the supernatural folklore definitely carried through the generations in my family. And so the whole concept of Grela and the Yule lads starts out as a way to scare your children into being good, just like Santa Claus, right? Grela will come and eat you. The Yule Cat will get you if you're not wearing your good sweater. If you're good, the Yule lads will leave a present for you in your shoe. But if you're bad, they'll leave you a rotten potato. And so my grandmother definitely raised me like this, because anywhere that she didn't want me to go, she told me a witch lived there. So a witch lived in the attic. She didn't want me snooping around in the attic in all the boxes of stuff, so a witch lived up there, so I don't go up in the attic because the witch will get me. A witch lived in the closet in the spare bedroom, so don't go in the closet because the witch will get you. A witch lived in the stone pile at the end of the driveway, so don't ride your bike on the road, stay on the driveway, but don't go on the road because the witch will get you. So
are you
that's really cool.
Okay now, or has this caused issues in your adulthood?
We have 93 episodes of a podcast. Anybody can go back and check and find out if I sound okay. Probably not.
That would have terrified me.
When you're a kid, you don't really believe it, but just to be safe, right?
Yeah,
oh no, yeah. I would have believed it. I just would have never left my room then. I would, yeah.
But what if there's a witch in your room?
Then, yeah, it would just be stuck to my mom's thigh. It would have, yeah. I remember one time she said, my mom, we were at a garage sale at our elementary school, and she bought this big giant burlap sack that went over her shoulder. And I remember I was bugging her. Like she's trying to talk to somebody. I was like, mom. And then she finally looked at me and was like, what? And I said, what's that for? And she denies saying this, but I remember it very distinctly. She says, it's for taking annoying children to the orphanage in. And then she bought the bag and brought it home and put it in the cupboard. And now I know it's an
just
apple
for safekeeping.
It's an apple picking bag, right? And she said that.
Well, that's what they say
it.
now.
Yeah, yeah. She forgot about it. It was big enough that it could have held me. She forgot about it, never thought about it. And for years, that bag sat in that cupboard. And I was just but she bought it, though. Yeah. I was so
just
close.
Waiting.
Yeah. So, yeah. I have a complex from that. I don't know how you don't have a complex from all the witch stuff.
Yeah, so.
My parents also told me, when my mom told me, that if we played on the escalator, we would get sucked into it, and then we would have to live in the escalator, and then mom would have to buy them all because we'd be stuck there.
Okay. Well, as a kid, we got shown public information films, which were kind of government financed things about what you shouldn't do. And there was ones for how to properly ride an escalator, which showed you, not in graphic detail, but leaving the horror to your imagination.
Yeah.
Of, how you'd get mangled in an elevator, an escalator, sorry. Which, what are they? Do they have a different name in the States?
No, escalator.
No? Okay, escalator. Yeah, so if you think it's bad being told that by your parents, imagine being shown a film from the government telling you, just watch on escalators in case you get chewed into
Mangled.
tiny little meaty bits. Yeah.
Yeah. So my mom, I mean, the way that she made it sound is like we'd be alive. We'd be flattened and living in like the basement cellar of the.
That sounds much
we'd be
nicer
trapped
than
in
just
there,
turned into
but-
bloody chunks.
Yeah. I guess that was nice of her. If you watch me and my sisters, though, when we go off the escalator, we still do like an extra big step. We just can't get close to that lip.
Yeah. That's just common sense.
To be fair, if you ever watch like videos where escalators fail and people fall into them and die, it's a very gruesome way to die. So like, do be careful on escalators.
Yeah.
There's one I saw where a guy's carrying a big pole and it hits the ceiling and then jams into the escalator and breaks the escalator and he falls inside of it. This is from back in the days before the internet, when it was easier to accidentally stumble upon gore on the internet, which is not so easy to do anymore.
Huh.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
Happy escalator gore.
Oh, dear.
Do we have anything else to say about this movie? Anything else left in our notes?
To end on a happier note than escalator death. I don't know. This is a fun film. I can see watching this with the family, just switching the brain off, enjoying either the lovely Lacey Chabert or the equally lovely and hunky Chase Baxter, whatever his real name is.
And it's different in that it's not about this successful woman that comes back to her hometown and meets some guy who teaches her about the values of Christmas, right?
I mean, it very much follows the Hallmark template, though, isn't it? Of career woman who's abandoned her ex-husband for her career, and then suddenly discovers the magic of Christmas and gets back together with him, even though, apart from looking very attractive, there's not really much to him, unless you're into Christmas trees, I guess.
He does. He's also like a Norse academic. Like he's smart, right?
But not so good at it that he doesn't have to sell Christmas trees.
And he looks really good in a sweater. She said he was helping out his parents' business.
Oh,
but,
yeah. So he's nice.
Yeah, he's nice. But also, I mean, it was also just nice, though, that like they had a relationship that they rekindled. It wasn't that she had to change her personality in order to have him fall in love with her. They didn't do that annoying, like, love-hate thing like they do at the beginning of lots of things. Like, there was arguments and animosity, but there was reasons for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. She didn't have to leave her career at the end. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you guys kind of like the movie, but maybe you're judging it for what it actually is. But like, they're getting back together there's no character growth. It's just like, oh, you got divorced. Why? Because I shook up the box of Christmas lights to tangle them just to piss you off. I guess I could stop doing that, and then our relationship would be okay. That's like essentially the crux of why they got divorced in the first place.
But it was because she loved him so much that she shook up the box so she could spend time with him.
Yes.
Admittedly, it is fairly annoying. I think you don't like it, Josh, because it makes fun of your family traditions. Yeah. And it doesn't take the Yule lads seriously enough.
Do you know what? It takes the Yule lads too seriously. Like, all the Icelandic stuff is fine. They don't say anything wrong other than the fact that the Yule lads had a treasure, which doesn't exist anywhere. But like, I can't really fault them. They talk about Grela and the Yule lads and the Yule cat, and it's all fine. They don't make any mistakes. And apart from the American actor's pronunciation, it's all Icelanders, so they're saying everything correct too.
I think what I'm saying, and I want to be clear with this, is not that it's a good movie.
No.
It's a good zone-out Christmas movie.
What I'm saying is it's a good Hallmark Christmas movie, right? So
yes,
I'm comparing it to other Hallmark Christmas. My sister makes me watch 20 of them over Christmas, and they're all the same.
Like Snowman's or Hot Frosty or Saving Christmas Spirit. If you're looking for something like that, it's not the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even just all the other ones that don't even have funny names or storylines. It's just all the same stuff, right?
Like Not Without My Christmas or things like that.
The Christmas sweater.
Talking of Christmas sweaters, the one that Lacey Chabert seems to have packed for her trip to Iceland when she's trying to rekindle her
the red one?
Relationship with Chase. The one that's the off the shoulder one.
Yeah, that was good.
That was a really nice jumper.
Yeah, it was. And where'd you get the ball gown again?
Where did he get a tux on Christmas Eve in Iceland?
They said that, like, how am I going to get a tux on Christmas Eve in Iceland? And I'm like, I don't think you're going to.
And then he's like, but
and
I
then
did.
next scene, he's in it.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.